The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. I was singing a song called Blowing in the Wind, and guess who showed up? You guys showed up today. So, and you know what? I got two pomegranates here. Yes, these are pomegranates. And what do they have to do with our story today? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. And the reason why the pomegranates are here is if the wind blows, because I'm outside, it'll hold my papers down. But these pomegranates were given to Lisa this morning. She had a breakfast get together with a nice lady from Calvary that you guys might know, Nadia. So this is from Nadia, the pomegranates. So if the wind starts to blow, the pomegranates will hold it down. So that's the only reason why they're in this story, to hold down my stuff. So the answer is going to be blowing in the wind today. So let's just think about that. And for you adults out there, hopefully I don't have a copyright problem by keep saying Blowing in the Wind by Bob Dylan. But for you kids out there, you ever wonder how strange it is that we don't see God? Think about it. We don't see him. We see pomegranates and we see plants and a hummingbird that might be behind me, but we don't see God. But if you were back in Jesus' day, if you had a question or if you wanted to know something, you just went right to Jesus. There he is. You could ask Jesus, you can ask God right there. But we don't have that, do we? We don't see God, but we believe in God. And Jesus had a story in the Bible about somebody just like that. Now, before I go any further, just because we don't see God doesn't mean he's not around us, right? It's like the wind. We see the wind blowing the trees and a flag, and we see the effects of wind, but you really don't see the wind, right? It's just air. That's kind of like God. We don't see him, but he's just there blowing in the wind. So the answer is blowing in the wind. Keep that thought for a second. Seconds up. No, think about that for a moment. So back in Jesus' day, if you wanted to see God, you just go find Jesus and you ask him questions. But there was this one story in the Bible. We're in the Gospel of John. So go to John, New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. And we're in chapter 3. And we're going to do John 3, verses 1 through 17. Now, if you watched the lesson last week, we focused only on John 3:16. But we're going to do John chapter 3, 1 through 17. So 3:16's in there, but we're going to do 1 through 17. And it's about a story about this guy named Nicodemus. So it's about this guy, about Nicodemus. And Nicodemus had a question for Jesus. And Nicodemus was a really good teacher. So he was a teacher, also known as a Pharisee. So he was a teacher, and Nicodemus had some questions about God. So who did he go talk to? Well, he talked to Jesus, because who's going to know more about God than Jesus? So let's go to our Bibles. Let's come over here. And we're going to go to John chapter 3. We're doing verses 1 through 17. And look, I have that highlighted, but I showed that to you last week too. And in the Gospel of John, I have a lot of things that I wrote in here. And one of them I have written here says, the wind cannot be seen, but you can see what it does. And that's like God. You can't see the wind, but you sure can see what he does, don't you? So let's go to our story. So if we go to John chapter 3, verses 1 through 17. Let me read this for you. And I'm going to read it off my notes here. There was a man named Nicodemus, one of the Pharisees. So it's this guy here. And we'll look at him again. He was an important Jewish leader. And one night he came to Jesus and he said, "Teacher, we know that you are a teacher sent from God. No one can do the miraculous signs that you do unless they are with God's help." So Nicodemus knows that Jesus is this cool guy that came from God because he could do all these miracles. Verse 3 says, Jesus answered, "I assure you, everyone must be born again. Anyone who is not born again cannot be in God's kingdom." Time out. That means time out, by the way. Time out. So Jesus tells him, hey, you got to be born again. Now, guys and girls, can you be born again? Can you be born again out of your mother's womb? No, that's not what Jesus is saying. And this is what Nicodemus right here was saying. He was saying that same question. So verse 4, Nicodemus says, how can a man who is already old be born again? Can he go back into a mother's womb and be born a second time? Jesus, verse 5 says, believe me when I say that everyone must be born from water and the Spirit. Keep that word there, the Spirit. Anyone who is not born from water and the Spirit cannot enter God's kingdom. I'm going to take a pomegranate, stick it right there because the wind's blowing. So anyone who is not born from water and the Spirit cannot enter God's kingdom, Jesus said. Verse 6, the only life people get from their human parents is physical, but the new life that the Spirit gives you is spiritual. So Jesus is saying, you got to be born from the Spirit. So you're not being born again physically, you're being born within the Spirit. So verse 7, don't be surprised that I told you you must be born again. The wind blows wherever it wants to. You hear it, hear that right there? But you don't know where it's coming from or where it's going. It is the same with everyone who was born from the Spirit. So think of the Spirit as the wind, okay? Verse 9, Nicodemus asked, how is all this possible? Jesus says in verse 10, you are an important teacher of Israel, Nicodemus, and you still don't understand these things. The truth is, we talk about what we know. We tell about what we've seen, but you people don't accept what we tell you. I have told you about things on earth, but you do not believe me, said Jesus. So I'm sure you will not believe me if I tell you about heavenly things. The only one who has ever gone up to heaven is the one who came down from heaven, the Son of Man. Who's the Son of Man? It's Jesus. See, this is pretty heavy stuff. Verse 14, Jesus says, Moses, which we call this Joshua tree, by the way, that Joshua tree's name is Moses. So Jesus says in verse 14, Moses lifted up a snake in the desert. It's the same with the Son of Man. He must be lifted up too. Then everyone who believes in him can have eternal life. So Jesus is saying, you got to take Jesus, lift him up into heaven, and believe. So what does believe mean? Believe means that you accept it, that it's true. So you got to believe in Jesus, lift him up into heaven, because you accept it that it's true. You believe your mom and dad when they say something, right? You accept it that it's true. Same thing with Jesus. We might not see him like the wind, but we believe in him because we accept it that it's true. So you should lift Jesus up, like it says in verse 14. And then there's that popular verse, which is the gospel in a nutshell. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. So Jesus says on John 3:16, you got to believe in me, just like you believe in what's going on with the wind. Lift me up, and you will have eternal life. So that leaves verse 17. Let me put the pomegranate right there, because the answer is blowing in the wind. That leaves verse 17. What's a judge? What is a judge? A judge is somebody who is appointed to decide cases. So when you think of a judge, you think there's somebody there that's there appointed to make sure somebody is right and wrong. So let's go to verse 17 here. John 3:17. God sent his son, Jesus, into the world. He did not send him to judge. So in other words, he did not send him to decide cases. That's not the reason why Jesus came in the world. He did not send him to judge the world guilty, but to save. Everybody say that. Save. But to save the world through him. Let's say that. Through him. So, I'm going to leave this right here for a second and come over here and look at me. So, Jesus was not sent in this world to judge you. He was here to save you. But if you believe in that, if you believe in Jesus, he will save you so you can have eternal life. Because he wasn't sent in this world to judge you. He was here to save you through him. So let's come right back over here. So all you have to do is believe. Say that, everybody. Believe. Because you accept it that it's true. So guys, girls, boys and girls, boys and guys and girls, just like the wind that is blowing, the answer is blowing in this wind. The answer is in Jesus, which is the Spirit. If you believe in him, just like you believe in the wind, you will find the answer. And what's the answer? That answer is Jesus. So just like those hummingbirds that have been flying behind me, I'll see you next time.